am I doing here?
You guys there?
I'm here.
Hey, Coach, how are you?
Another day in paradise.
Yeah, I see a Martinello screen. It's not very bright, though.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. We just can't see you.
Okay.
Hey, there you are.
There he is.
Okay.
All right, so we're live. We're recording. This has started. Coach, I don't think we've ever met each other, ever.
How are you, Chris? Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as
Brother
well.
Ron, how are you?
I don't know if you know Chris Colin, the head coach at Detroit Mercy.
I certainly do. Chris, nice to see you.
How are you doing?
I'm great, thanks.
So I don't know if you know what the heck we're doing here or why we're doing it. But Coach Colin and I have been saying for 3 years now that we need to start a podcast and just start interviewing people from around Michigan and talking about Michigan lacrosse. Lacrosse is on sabbatical right now while we're all quarantined, so we finally kicked it off. And we're interviewing everybody from Hall of Fame coaches to rural mid-Michigan coaches. We're interviewing boys, we're interviewing girls, we're interviewing old legends, we're interviewing young up. We're just anybody that has anything to do with lacrosse in Michigan, we're reaching out to have a conversation. So the reason why you're here is you've been a part of the Windsor landscape, but also the Michigan landscape, and particularly the Detroit professional landscape over the last several years. So I wanted to have you on and just kind of pick your brain, have you tell us some stories, tell us advice for coaches, advice for players, box versus field, whatever the heck we want to talk about. The conversation can go anywhere. So if you're good for the next hour, settle in and chit-chat.
Well, I'm here, so let's do it.
Perfect. So the official title of this is the U.S. Lacrosse Michigan podcast. And I'm the current chapter president, and I'm trying to help recruit some people to get back involved. A lot of the history of Michigan lacrosse starts with guys driving across the border to Windsor to play box back in the day. So can you just kind of give everyone that doesn't know who you are, your name, your current day job, if you have one, your current role in lacrosse, whether it's coaching high school, coaching travel, coaching boys, coaching girls, and then I'll take some more questions to you from there.
Hey, Ron, let's start. Why don't you start from the beginning? Why don't you start from humble beginnings in Windsor, I think, and we'll work to today. What do you think? You think you can do that in about 10 minutes, 15 minutes?
Yeah, I guess, hey, Chris. Well, you know, of course, my lacrosse career all began back in Windsor, where my dad was a member of the Windsor Clipper team. My dad had played lacrosse since he was probably 15 years old, and he gave us sticks. So we started off with sticks. Myself and my brother Wayne, who is a year older than I am, and my younger brother Terry, who's 4 years younger. Interestingly enough, we didn't have lacrosse until I was probably 13 years old as far as a minor system was concerned. And younger brother Terry started first. He started when he was like 4 years old, and he was too good for the 4-year-old, so he kind of had to put it on hold for about 4 or 5 years. And at that time, we finally got involved as 13-year-olds, my brother Wayne and myself. And it was pretty funny because I'll never forget going to Riverside Arena, where Riverside was just a suburb of Windsor at the time, which is now part of Windsor. We went to Riverside Arena with a couple of garbage bags with lacrosse equipment in it, and said, okay, you're going to play a game. And I still never forget it because it was the first time we'd ever played a lacrosse game. And we both had pretty good success. So right after that game, they said, okay, you're not in house league anymore. You're now on the travel team. So from there, of course, we were big fans of Windsor Clippers, the senior lacrosse team. And in 1970, I believe it was, my dad was the captain of the Clippers at the time. And they went on to the Canadian Championship. And it started, lacrosse in Windsor just became rampant from that point on. From there, the next year, they had a big contest to see why don't we make it a different name. And they ended up becoming the Windsor Warlocks at that time. And from there, we just, I guess the rest is history. We started playing junior lacrosse when we were 15, 16 years old, and then moved immediately into field lacrosse, which I think the first field lacrosse game I ever played, we came over to Michigan, and I believe we played Wayne State or something like that. I think it. I just remember.
I think it was Lance Cruz.
Lance Cruz.
Yeah, I think you played Lance Cruz. I think you hear different things from different people over the years, but one of the folklore stories is that you guys played Lance Cruz.
Oh, okay. Well, as I said, we came across the border and we played a bunch of exhibition games, and of course got to meet some of the boys at that time. And next thing you know, I was. What happened here? Did I lose something?
Yeah, your video dropped off.
Start my video again.
Losey's got a piece of birthday cake we're going to watch him eat while you're waiting for that. Oh, there he is.
Okay.
It's Losey's daughter, Abby's birthday. Coach John Losey.
Happy birthday.
Coach Martinello.
So anyway, then from that point on, we continued to play indoor lacrosse, or box lacrosse, we were calling it at that time. And experimenting into the field game, got involved with the provincial program, the Ontario provincial program, and then of course the Canadian program. And once I was with the Canadian program, we were traveling around quite a bit to the East Coast, playing a lot of the different universities. And I remember at that time, the coaches said, listen, we have a list of schools. If you think you'd like to go to university, send these people your information. So I remember my brother Wayne and I, we were sitting at the kitchen table, and Dad was counseling us and said, yep, what they really like statistics. So you guys got plenty of statistics. So write your letters. I'll check them for you, but put lots of statistics in. It was pretty funny. I think we got about 14 or 15 offers to go to universities from people who had never even seen us play.
Wow.
And, so that was back in 75. And I remember my guidance counselor came in to my class in high school and pulled me out of class one day and said, you can't believe it, but Cornell has accepted you to go to school. And I said, Cornell? Wait, that's up in New York. That's cold. I want to go somewhere south. And as it turned out, Cornell ended up beating Maryland in the championship game. And a friend of mine, Hall of Famer Mike French, ended up scoring 7 goals and had 4 assists, and Cornell beat Maryland 17-16, I think it was.
Wow.
75 or 76 game. And the very next day, Buddy Beardmore, the coach of Maryland, called the house and said, we want you to come and see our school. And I said, well, we already kind of committed to going to oh my goodness. You guys know the name of the school. I got to remember it now.
Was it Denison?
No, they were Division III champs for a long time, then moved into
Hobart.
Division I.
Oh,
Hobart.
We're all set. I said, my brother and I, we're going to Hobart. And Coach Beardmore said, well, boys, you know that's Division III. And I really didn't know the difference between Division I or Division III or anything like that at the time. And he goes, well, you should come and see our school if you want to play with the men instead of the boys. And so we ended up flying into D.C., Washington National Airport. Never forget flying over the Potomac. There was Washington, D.C., 1975, 76, right at the time of Watergate was going on. And that's all we knew about it really was Watergate. And they toured us around, walked around the campus. Mike Farrell, All-American defenseman back in the day, he was our big brother that showed us around that day. And the campus was outstanding. I'll never forget the first time University of Maryland, Hobart was a nice campus,
right,
but no comparison.
A whole different world.
Maryland was,
How old were you, Coach, at that time? How old were you that year?
I was 17 at the time.
Okay.
And so when we decided that we were going to go to Maryland, I'll never forget Dad saying, well, we got to forfeit that $500 down payment now. So we ended up.
Those Martinello brothers, I remember, Ron, the cool thing about Ron's story that is he had a lot of college offers, but at all of them you said, if you're going to take me, you got to take my brother.
Yeah.
And
it was a package deal. Package deal.
So you had that kind of, after that Mike French game, everybody was after you guys. And I remember your brother saying, yeah, thank God he took me along with him.
Yeah, Wayne was always pretty realistic about it. He was a fine player, don't get me wrong. And again, as a left-hander, he was a commodity.
Yep.
Yeah.
And, still to the day, it was so funny. I just got a text from Bill Baroza. And Bill, of course, played for the United States team back in '82 as a goaltender, and he's the head coach of the Israeli team now.
Okay.
And he sent me this text about a scouting report from back when we had Team Canada. We had played in Philly, and they did a scouting report. I still never forget it. And there was at least 12 or 13 left-handers on that Team Canada team.
Wow.
Because of hockey, we have a lot of left-handers. Like I said, it was just we never thought about it as not having any left-handers until, of course, now I find out, coaching over in Michigan now that they truly are commodities.
Yeah.
Here, I want to share this. This is from your Hall of Fame page for the Windsor, but that's you and your brother Wayne side by side in the second row. Definitely think that for the sake of Michigan lacrosse, you need to bring Brett back that hair and that mustache. So, Coach, you're currently coaching at U of D Jesuit as their head varsity coach. Are you also coaching club anywhere?
Oh, I think he froze.
I did see a paused face, and
I think he froze.
I was disturbed for a second, and he's gone.
Was it my mustache?
Coach Martinello.
It was. It was it.
So Coach Martinello, I think he's still, Coach Ron and I are longtime friends. So, I know some of the stories here, and he's a very humble man. So, he had a stellar collegiate career. I think he's still in the top 10 in scoring at the University of Maryland. He's pretty much a legend. He doesn't, he's such a humble guy. He doesn't like to talk about it. So while he's frozen, I'll talk about it. Just a scoring legend. Just with if you've ever got to see him play, which I'm lucky enough to have seen him play, I was a kid. It's just one of the smoothest, toughest, silky, slow as fast, fast as smooth type players you've ever seen. Not overpowering, but tough. Just the combination of everything that you really want to see. I think, I bet you if he put on, his stuff today, he'd be just as good as he was back then.
That's awesome. Was he a lefty? Was he a lefty, Chris?
I think he was a righty. I know there's some video out there.
I love the package deal with his brother. He was the first Shaq and Kobe to take their talents to the same school. I love that.
Yeah. I mean, he had everybody looking at him. And again, I've spent some time at Faces, which we'll talk about later. And being, these guys to me are all, the guys that I kind of idolized, right? When we were little kids watching Turbos and stuff like that. They were John Rose, all these guys are it's pretty amazing that they're still around kicking.
Who's got Turbo's gear? Anybody got Turbo's gear? I mean,
I'm sure he's got some spandex somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I've been looking for Turbo's gear and Turbo's gear and Michigan Panther gear. I mean, those are two of my big ones.
Yeah, he had probably a little throttle down on his network, as that happens to me sometimes.
Yeah.
Or the arena. What was the arena football team we had?
The Detroit Drive.
The Drive. That was the other one too.
So
sorry, I get off topic. I'm all jacked up on cake and Mountain Dew, and all kinds of stuff. So sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah, I may have another.
Coach Martinello right now is he's working. He does a lot of work with the Premier Coach Greeny, and the Premier
Lax
group.
Yeah.
Premier Lax group. They do a heck of a job out there. They've had a real good, loyal group of kids that have stuck with them.
PLG, right?
Yeah, he's a PLG coach. He runs most of their box stuff. He does a lot of their programs. I know he's been coaching with that 21 group that's stuck together. And
Matthew played for him. My son. They had a tournament out there about a month ago, and they needed players on the 21 team, and Matthew, my junior, went out there and played with him.
Yeah, and he's got just such a great demeanor with kids that it's like how he plays, right? It's relaxed, but it's tough.
Right.
He's got really that down better than anybody. And for me, I've always tried to emulate that a little bit in the way I handle a lacrosse game, whether I'm coaching, playing, or whatever the situation is, because it's a pretty cool mentality to have when he's out there. So he does a really great job. You can see that those kids, it's starting to rub off on them as he continues to work with those programs. And we're seeing that with the U of D kids too. They got that toughness and that kind of humble, quiet part too.
Yeah.
So
Coach is back. Coach Chris Colin's been singing your praises since you've been gone. So your ears hopefully were ringing.
Coach, you might be muted still.
Yeah, he's getting there.
You got me back, guys?
There you are.
You're back.
So I had another piece of cake while you were gone, Coach. So that's 2 in about 12 minutes. So just letting you know.
Okay.
I was worried the mustache comment pissed you off and you were running for the hills or something.
That was it. He was done.
Well, here, I wanted to share this.
That old stash, though.
Yeah, we also found the old record book from Maryland where you're still 6th all-time for goals in a season with 47 goals in 81 and 19th in points in a season with 62 in the 81 season, and still 14th for goals all-time with 96 goals, 77 to 81. So you've punched quite a hole in that record book and built a legacy down there. Chris was sharing some of the stories about watching you play when you were doing some field stuff and talking about Maryland while you were gone. am dying to get to the Turbos talk, but I'm going to let you guys continue to talk Maryland and kind of the Team Canada stuff first before I fanboy out on that.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to get the Turbos too, but give me your top. That's great picture.
Yeah,
that's great.
Great picture. Can you give us maybe your top field memory, whether it's Team Canada or at Maryland, or if you got two, maybe share us kind of your, as a player, your top two favorite moments.
I'll tell you, Chris, the first one was definitely, I played in a tournament in Toronto, and this was before I went to Maryland, and I had reached out to Maryland the year before while I was in grade 12 and never heard back from them. So from all the schools that I had spoken to, I never heard back from Maryland. And so we were playing on Team Canada. We were playing Mount Washington Lacrosse Club, Maryland Lacrosse Club, and I think Australia was in Canada at the time. And I was playing against Maryland Lacrosse Club, and Doug Rodabaugh was playing for Maryland Lacrosse Club at the time. And I remember I didn't, I faced off in box lacrosse. And then so automatically I faced off in field lacrosse. And of course it was certainly a different face off. But I remember going against Doug Rodabaugh, and I beat him twice. He whipped me like 5 times, but I beat him twice. And then finding out that he was, of course, an All-American at Maryland and turned out to be a great guy. He ended up going back and saying to Buddy Bierman, you better look at that guy, because I scored 5 goals in that game. And I still remember my buddy Gord Lyons, who was a great Hall of Famer out of Brampton. His buddy Bobby Burke and I were playing on attack, and so I looked him off one time and scored from the crease to give me my 5th goal. And Gordy Lyons, of course, walks up to me. He goes, "Nice goal, Martinello." And yeah, he was like, I don't know, 6, 7 years older than me. "Nice goal, Martinello. But did you see Burke open?" And it kind of taught me something about, you know what, you got to share also, eh? And
yeah.
Of course, this is what I try to explain to the kids all the time. Yeah, it's nice to be a goal scorer, but it's nice to get some assists. And so when you were showing those Maryland stats, it kind of made me chuckle, because at 3 years ago, I was where you said with the goals, but they didn't have me in the top 20 for scoring because they had me with no assists. And so hooked up with Curtis Roundtree, who was the head of the Maryland alumni. He goes, "Curtis, what the heck is going on?" I said, "I know I had at least 25 assists throughout my career." And then John Lehman, again, an all-time great. He goes, "Martinello, get off it, will you? We didn't bring you to Maryland for assists, you idiot."
You were shooting; they just got in the way,
Yeah.
Exactly. But certainly some great memories from Maryland. And again, all of them were great. The unfortunate part with Maryland was I never beat Johns Hopkins the whole time I was there. I lost 4 seasons in regular season to them, and 3 years in a row they were my final game. Once in the championship, once in the semis, and once in the quarters. And I'll never forget, so when I'm playing with Team Canada, we go to Baltimore and we play Hopkins. And we beat Hopkins. And it was just, it made me feel so good. And what made me feel so good even better was Henry Ciccarone, the coach of Hopkins at the time, comes into the dressing room after the game, thanks everybody very, very much for coming and participating and showing the Hopkins fans such a great show. And he has a special award And of course, he calls me up with a Hopkins toque and says, "I want to present this to you, Martinello, since you never beat us during your college career."
Son of a-
that was a
Nice.
fantastic time.
Very nice. So it's interesting. We're asking your favorite memories. You were on the '78 World Championship team for Canada, weren't you?
No, I didn't play for the '78. I played for the '82 team.
Okay.
I was in college in '78. I was hoping to get the nod, but they went with an older class, except for Stan Cockerton, who was Mr. World that year, and they ended up with the big upset over the U.S. that year.
Do they still lean on you, the Canadian national team, for tryout, scouting, alumni events? Are they still in touch with you as one of their alumni?
Well, you know, they do chat with me periodically. I used to hear from Dave Huntley quite often because he was a big part of it all. And, of course, always wondering what was going on down in, they called it the armpit of Ontario in Windsor. We never got a whole lot of say what goes on in the CLA or the OLA. But he would periodically touch base with me pertaining to a couple of the young guys that were playing for me in Windsor at the time. And but all in all, I really haven't been involved too much with it. I kind of made, you know, after finishing up in Maryland, I became such good friends with guys over in Detroit that I spent more time playing field lacrosse in Detroit than I did anywhere else.
Okay. I want to touch on kind of your role as the PLG box lacrosse coach, and we're seeing such an influence now in American field players getting into box and using that for development. I laugh because I never, when I was playing in the late 80s in Michigan, I never went across the bridge to Canada to play. Our idea of box lacrosse was Square Lake Indoor Racket Club, but we'd still use our 6-foot long sticks out there. I remember Gannon Dudler, the big 6'5" defensive end that went to Michigan, running down the sideline with a stick in one hand and damn near dislocating his shoulder because he hit the bar overhead with the stick, because those beams on the side it was a tennis court. It wasn't built for those games. Are you seeing it now as a have to have for a field player to understand the two-man game and to get the sense and the touch and the stick? How do you feel about box for the field player with all of your experience?
Well, Chris, you know, that's an interesting question. And again, when I got involved with Mark Greeny and PLG, geez, it's 5 or 6 years ago now. Hey, Coach. I mean, it just happens. It's happened so fast. But I remember the lack of stick skills is still a problem in Michigan.
Big time.
And you know, I mean, I've seen them, the Chicago kids, the Ohio kids, the Kentucky kid, all of the American kids I've seen great improvement as far as their stick skills are concerned. They're still so far behind. And again, I speak with Mark Greeny and Chris. I know we've spoken before about it. If we could only get the kids to start in indoor lacrosse and then move them to outdoor, we would see such a huge improvement in their stick skills. One of the things that my uncle was the manager of the Windsor Arena, and whenever we had a day off school prior to summer, we were at the Windsor Arena throwing the ball around and playing lacrosse constantly. We always had our sticks with us. You could throw the ball off the wall. And I remember when we first started field lacrosse, I mean, I'm going back in the mid 80s when I was helping coach. I mean, I think I was Chris, you brought up Lance Cruz and some of the schools over on that side. I don't even think the kids were playing wall ball at that time. So, I mean, to see the improvement over the years, it's been great. They need to understand that it's more than just giving the ball to the best kid and letting him run by people because he's bigger and more athletic. They need to show that everybody can pass and catch and catch in close. Like, I mean, you got to see a coach in the university level. See kids being able to receive the ball and score
Finish.
Right is something that just doesn't happen. It takes a lot of work, and those kids are the ones working on it.
Yeah.
And let me ask you one question on that, Coach. I mean, I think I totally agree with you. I've actually seen in the state of Michigan somewhat of a decrease in the 6 skills, where for whatever reason it's almost going in the other direction. But I think, you know, the other thing that I see is that when you look at really the coaches at the high school level and the youth level, that a lot of the offenses are really just they're set up to really do what you just said: get it to the best player, downhill, split dodge, you know, running down the alley, downhill, big midi to shoot. Where the offenses, you just don't see any more cutting around the goal. You don't see any more. You know, I mean, you know, to feed the crease from the top is what you see in Michigan all the time. I mean, you don't see a lot of movement, and you don't see anybody catching it in tight and finishing. And so I think that goes to your point. But you think about it, you know, do I want to have an offense that is going to give me the best chance to win, or do I want to develop the kids? You know, it's kind of the egg or the chicken or the egg.
Yeah, well, and again, I guess that all has to do with scheduling. So, you obviously want to win. And my first year at Detroit Jesuit High School was interesting because the year prior to that, they graduated like 22 seniors. So I was kind of stuck with a bunch of young kids. And I kind of went with the idea that said, you know what, let's try some different things. Again, we got to win. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
That's pretty important. So I think over the 3 years, I'm going in my 4th year with them now, we've seen some great improvement in kids being able to work with their sticks. I do a lot of box drills in my practices, and again, a lot of passing and catching. And these kids say, "Oh, this is kind of boring." Well, when you catch it 35 or 40 times in a row, then we won't be so bored, will we?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You know, one of the things, getting back to your point about start them indoors and then bring them outdoors, there isn't the facilities, the indoor time, the whatever around here for what we need. And it's pay to play, you know, and it's not cheap. One thing that, you know, the U.S. Lacrosse youth development model is really trying to push is having smaller size fields, smaller sides. So, you know, we've seen it for years. Youth lacrosse, you get a bunch of U10s, you get a bunch of 9-year-old third graders. You put 20 kids on the field with one ball, and the biggest kid on my team and the biggest kid on your team are going to take turns trying to run through the entire team, get to the crease, and slam dunk it past the goalie. And it's not good for anybody. So the thought is, if we can go smaller fields, smaller games, you know, more touches per kid, less kids per side, can we start doing something? And it's the player development model that they've been trying to move towards. But you've got, you know, some old school guys that just still say, you know, no, we play lacrosse, it's 10 on 10 and we're going to do it. And we've got some, you know, a lot of cases that the coach is the dad that said, yeah, I guess I'll do it. I've coached baseball before. I've coached soccer before. I've coached, you know, whatever. So we're trying to make some developments on the field side at the U.S. lacrosse level, but it's starting indoors and then moving outdoors with a box to field model. I don't, at least I haven't heard that as a concept yet, but it's definitely something to keep in mind. You know, I know 5-6 years ago, Ambrose was really pushing for the Rice kids to start really going indoors and working on the box stuff. And now you see it everywhere. You know, not only does Greeny have his PLG stuff, you know, Trenton Gaffner is getting field time up in Flint, and all those kids from Heartland and Grand Blanc and all those kids, they're going to play in a Flint indoor soccer facility somewhere. So he's got Fenton, he's got Flint. You know, I know that it's not just one place anymore. And I know the officials that I ref with, you've got guys like Bill Schmidt and Brian Effinger and Josh Pate that have gone out and learned the box rules to properly officiate it. I haven't gone to look at the box stuff at all as an official or a coach or anything yet. My son's 9. He's not quite there, but maybe I really should, you know, start considering that going forward. It's just one of those things that, you know, we see so many kids that have come over to the Titans with their box lacrosse experience. And I keep going back to some of the best kids that have ever, you know, played on Titan field, like Shane Adams. You know, Beaner could catch anything, anywhere, and he was just a finisher around the goal, and he had tremendous eyesight, and it's from playing box lacrosse. And you look at all the guys like Chewy, and you look at guys that they have now like Waters, there's you can tell the Canadian attackmen because they know how to finish in tight and they know how to make that extra pass. And like you said, I think that's something that we see lacking in the American field game, especially here in Michigan high school. And how do we get there without getting these kids to play 10 years of box? You know, how do we accelerate that development?
Well, again, I guess it all comes down to the same principles just that you're talking about. I mean, it starts with facilities for sure. I mean, if you don't have facilities, it's pretty hard to put anybody into them.
Yeah.
And again, I'm most of the thing that I was stating, but we basically were saying, if we could put the kids indoor early to develop their skills, just think how good they would be when they hit high school to move to the field. It would be fantastic. Again, maybe not so realistic because, as you said, the facilities, you know, every city or community in Canada has a hockey rink. And
right.
When that ice is out of there, they got to do something with it. And that's where box lacrosse basically came from, was the fact that, hey, you know what?
We got to use it.
Arena, let's use it.
Yeah.
I'm going to give one piece that I've taken from Coach Martinello from well before I was coaching at Detroit. One of the things I've learned from him is that he instructs during a drill while a drill is active. A lot of coaches you can see today will, and again, that leads to more touches and quicker touches. You know, we can talk about box drills. You can go online and look at box drills all you want and videos. But one of the things that's in his secret sauce where kids get really good really fast is while they are executing, he is instructing. And while you see a lot of coaches today stop drills to talk and to, you know, everything stops while they talk, he has a technique to coach while things are going on. And I think that's a smart thing to do, and so I do it.
Well, thanks, Chris. You know what? I guess it still stems from the passion. I mean,
Yep.
You know, I wish I was 20 years old again so I could be actually running those drills with those kids. You know, I mean, I honestly, I just miss it so much, and I just love I love the idea that I'm working with these young kids now, and to see them improving and moving on further is just, it's fantastic. It really is a great thing.
Well, it's a testament to you and your commitment if you're willing to drive across the bridge every day to coach them up and drive back at the end of the day, because you're still a Windsor resident, correct?
Yeah, that's, you know, it's interesting. The reason that Detroit Jesuit was the selection was because the proximity to the border. You know, the idea that like I can see the Ambassador Bridge pretty much from my house. So to jump on the bridge or to go across the tunnel is and over to Jesuit is, you know, is maybe 20 minutes depending on what goes on at the borders.
Yeah.
At first I thought that Plymouth might have been the the satisfaction that I was seeking. But after driving out to Canton as long as I have for PLG, I'm like, wait a minute, I can't do this every day.
Yeah. On the weekends, one thing. During every day is another. All right. So, Chris, John, any questions, or can I start being Turbo's fanboy?
Yeah,
let's go with the turbos. I got so many turbos.
I got one quick thing to get in, Coach. Good friends with Pat Conroy, and so you've got Jack Conroy, a senior this year on your team. Good player. You want to talk to him a little bit? Maybe some of your players on your team. Hopefully we'll get to see him on the field this year, but we'll see.
Yeah, Jack Conroy is just one fine individual, and I certainly. I feel so saddened by the fact that, although they haven't said it completely done yet, I know he was looking so forward to his senior year and
worked so hard.
And he's worked so hard. I mean, I probably chatted with him more than anybody else over the years. Well, I guess Sean Richards, who's at Marquette now, he would bend my ear all the time. But Jack really is an outstanding individual, and I just wanted to see him be the main guy out of all
what he could do
this year.
Yeah,
he's fun to watch.
It's
not done yet, Coach. Not done yet, Coach.
With us constantly about what's going to happen. Who knows? Mark Ewell, who's the executive director of the MHSAA, was just interviewed by a journalist up in Grand Blanc today, saying we haven't given up on the season. We don't want to give anyone any false impressions about we know what's going to happen, but if there's a chance, we're going to find a way to make it work. So fingers crossed that the governor doesn't come out tomorrow and shut it down for the rest of the year. We're all fingers crossed.
Well. And to add to that, Chris, I mean, I think that the most important thing that I put out on Twitter last night was I didn't see the interview today, but the one last night was his comment about that, implying that school being shut down doesn't necessarily mean that the season is done, right? I mean, so he insinuated that that they could still play into July, so let's say school's closed, but no one can do anything anyway, right? And so, we're not free and clear until the middle of May, because remember, the MHSA is a for-profit organization, and so, I was everything he said in the interview that I posted on Twitter last night, it was almost like I wrote it myself for the seniors, and so I'm more encouraged today than I was before.
So fingers crossed for tomorrow. All right. Transitioning turbos, and I want to give you the backstory on why I'm so excited about this. So 1989 is the first season, and you guys, my mom and dad took me down to one game at Joe Louis because I was thinking about playing lacrosse in the spring for St. Hugo. Had a blast, did the whole Detroit thing from the suburbs in the 80s. We parked in a surface lot in Greektown. We went to Pizzapopolis. We walked across to Trapper's Alley at the time, which is now the Greektown Casino, to hop in the People Mover to go to our game. Had a blast, had no idea what was going on. The spandex still kills me that you guys wore spandex, but we all wore it back then. We'll get to that. So the 1990 season, got to go to a couple games, had some fun, and going back through some of the records and stuff today, I didn't realize you were second team all-league in the 90 season. And so the 90 season is my first year at Brother Rice. I play on the JV team. Really start falling in love with lacrosse is now my sport. This is what I'm passionate. I love about it. And so we're starting to understand what an air gate is, and we're starting to hear stuff out of Syracuse, and we're starting to follow some of this stuff a little bit closer. And they announced end of May, the MIL draft, that there's going to be dual first-round draft picks, and you guys draft Gary, and they throw Paul in as the player to be named later that day or whatever. And so we're excited about it, but we kind of forget about it a little bit because now we've got summer ball and now we're back to school and everything. So this is my memory. My dad has the worst poker face in the world. My dad is, if he was a card player, he'd be broke. But Christmas 1990, he comes over holding this envelope. And I'm a freshman in high school, so I'm probably looking for a Sega system or electronics or something. And he's got an envelope, and his smile is this big. I mean, he is the Cheshire Cat from Alice in Wonderland. He is so excited for me to open this gift. And I open it up, and it is season tickets for the Turbos and his commitment to take me down to every home game to see the Gait Brothers. And probably my moody teenage self was probably sitting there next to the Christmas tree, giving my mom dirty looks because she wanted me to open presents and take pictures. And I just remember from there I was off the wall and was so excited, so passionate about it. My dad and I would normally grab an extra ticket for him. He'd let me grab one of my buddies. We'd go sit third row off the glass. He'd be sitting up in the concourse drinking beer, watching Michigan State basketball games or something. But, you know, we wore those stupid white camouflage hats with the Turbos logo in purple. We had every T-shirt, pennant, program. I remember the Coors Light girl in the middle of the team photo and the poster on my wall. Like, we were fanatics. And you guys did great that season. You absolutely killed it, destroyed everybody in the league. There's so many stories that we heard about that time because there was no internet. Like, if there was a road game, it wasn't like we could even turn on Past Sports and watch it. It was just, we waited till the next day to check the free press, and there might be one line of a box score that was just the score. I remember the championship game, even though you guys are the 1 seed, they moved it to Baltimore to play down there, and we didn't know you guys won the championship until like Monday because it didn't hit the paper till Monday. So I'm a fan, and I'm super excited about this, and I have a million questions, but do you want to give us a quick deep dive about how it was playing for your dad, how it was going from the captain, the leading goal scorer, the leading assist guy on the team to now playing with these superstars that were getting all the attention? I would just want to shut up and have you give me a couple initial thoughts, and then I'll ask questions.
Yeah, okay, Chris. That's it. You just brought back a whole lot of memories to me. I still go back to it because I was playing for the Windsor Detroit or Detroit Windsor Lacrosse Club, and Billy Barossa, who had worked for IBM, moved into Detroit. And he was good friends with the two owners, Russ and Chris, the two owners of the MILL. And he had some conversation with them, said, you know, I think they're going to bring a team into Detroit, Ron. Would you be interested in coaching? And I'm like, yeah, of course, because I hadn't played any box lacrosse in probably 6-7 years. I said, yeah, I'd be interested in coaching. I said, you know, I could probably grab some guys and we could, you know, help out between Windsor guys and Michigan guys. We'll be able to put some team together, and I think we've got some concepts that would kind of surprise everybody. So we started, it all started to proceed, and then Billy came to me and goes, I don't think we have enough players. You think you might want to play? And I'm like, all right, well, you should have mentioned that 2 months ago, because now I'm really going to have to get on the bike and get moving a little bit. So he said, do you think your dad would be interested in coaching? And I goes, well, there's only one way to find out. We'll ask him. And so we got together with Dad and had this conversation, and Dad was like, yeah, okay, yeah, I'll coach, but you guys are doing it my way. I'm like, well, Dad, we didn't think anything else because it's always your way anyway. So as it started off, we that first year, and again, the concept of transition game that we started with the Turbos, we played 3 lines. And we ran up, down, off, up, down, off. That was the concept. That was the Windsor concept. And then originally the Oshawa concept of box lacrosse. So we surprised a lot of guys because they weren't really the mill weren't really into the fast break game. And we made our living off of 3-on-2s and 2-on-1s. So it worked out pretty good that first year. We weren't rich in talent, but we did have Ted Sawicki, our goalie. So that kind of helped out. The next year, and again, I think we lost to New York in the playoff game, so we got eliminated. But the next year, we came out, and now everybody was kind of ready for us. And we weren't as successful that year, except for my younger brother, Terry, who won the scoring title that year.
Yeah.
And as part of the trivia, Chris, you'll be interested to know this, that Terry was the last person to win the scoring title that name wasn't Gait or Traveris for like 12 years.
Yeah, it was forever after that.
Yeah. So it was pretty fun. And then of course, then all of a sudden I hear, like you did through the grapevine, that, oh no, we have 2 number 1 picks. We get Air Gait, Gary, and his brother Paul. And still, one of the most fantastic things I ever saw in all of my years of lacrosse was the first practice that the Gates boys came to practice. And so they wanted, my dad said, boys, we're so happy to have you here. Why don't you say a couple words? And the first thing that they said was, well, scoring is about deception. You have to be able to deceive the defender. So we went into 2-on-2 drills. So the 2 brothers go into a pick and roll. This is no word of lie. It was the greatest thing I ever saw in my life. Gary runs off the pick, rolls the ball between Paul's legs. Paul picks it up off the ground behind the defender, walks in and bangs it in the net. And they both look up at everybody and say, that's deception. And of course, I think they ran away with the scoring title that year by 30 points over the next closest person.
Yeah, I mean, that season, Paul led the league in scoring for goals, but Gary led the league in points because so many of Paul's goal was everybody focus on Gary and then goal. Behind the back pass, catch, shoot, goal. I mean, there was just so much of that from those 2 that year. Like you said, you had Sawicki in net, and he made up for a lot of errors on that transition for you guys. He was such a rock star back there. I remember I'm still a gearhead when it comes to that stuff. And his neck protector was just like he took the face mask of an old field helmet and cut off everything but 6 inches and hung it as this piece of swinging rusty metal off of his chin strap. And that was a lot of fun down there. Like I said, I remember you guys get the number 1 seed. You had rolled through everybody, but New York had beat you guys twice that year in the regular season. Yeah. You didn't see New York in the playoffs. And then they just had the championship game. Well, Baltimore's got a better attendance record. At least this is what we were told back in '91, because I was bugging my dad, like, we've got to make sure we buy, because the playoffs weren't part of the season ticket package. We got to get these tickets. And then they announced, oh, no, the finals. And like I said, there was no past sports going to carry this game. We found out in the Detroit Free Press or the Detroit News 2 days later in a line because there was no internet. There was no Twitter. And it wasn't like I knew who the heck you were and I could have my dad call you and go, hey, Ron, how'd your boys do last night? This was just we didn't know.
The sad part about that, the saddest part about the championship was for Michigan, because I think in the stats they showed that Baltimore had 100 more people than us on average attendance. But Joe Louis could hold 20,000.
Right.
Baltimore Memorial could hold exactly what they could get in there, and that was like 11-5. And I really believe that that was a big downfall for the Turbos, because I think the next year's season tickets almost went in half because so many people were upset about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were upset.
I remember we had a bunch of people were going to go. I mean, I didn't even really follow lacrosse back then, but I remember this distinctly, that we were getting a big group of people to go down because of the playoffs, and it was going to be a whole big to-do. I guarantee you would have doubled any output you would have probably had for that, for that playoff run. And to your point, it it ruined it. It pretty much tanked the team because of that decision by the league to move it to Baltimore.
Yeah, yeah. And so I played the next year, of course, and that was my final year. I called her quits at I think I was just turning 36, and that whole getting on the treadmill and the bike and everything was getting more and more difficult every year. So, to play 8 or 10 games just really wasn't worth it for me anymore. And again, as I say, I still look back at those memories as just fabulous. And the friends that I made out of that, like you think of a guy out of Michigan, Adam Mueller, who was just a fantastic player, and I believe he's in the coaching ranks somewhere now. And all of the guys, it was just a fantastic time.
Colin, I've been going on. You've got a bunch of questions. Why don't you take a couple and run with them? Because I've got one story I want to see if he can verify happened as we wrap this up. We got time. We got plenty of time.
I want, so my favorite player was from '93, the backup goalie, Paul Moots. Ron, do you know him?
Yeah.
Do you remember him?
Yes, I do.
And he became my favorite player. He became my favorite player because the one time he was supposed to dress, he got benched because he forgot his equipment. So then he became my favorite player for the rest of the Turbo's existence. Tell me about him as a person. I have no idea. I could never find information. There's Google. I can't find anything about the guy. But as a high schooler, that we always cheered for him, and we'd always scream at you guys to put him in. And he always looked a little rough on the bench.
Yeah,
like he stayed out a little too late. So tell me about him.
He was a great guy, and first and foremost, you hit it right on the head. He was a goaltender, and a different breed, without a doubt.
Inherently.
I've always said that about him. You love goaltenders, but they're a breed apart, that's for sure. And of course, I remember just a couple funny times that we had, and Sawicki was a high school teacher and pretty straightforward guy. There wasn't too many wrinkles about him, but Paul certainly had some funny sides to him, and again, I've always just attributed to the fact that he was a goalie. But a lot of those guys, of course, they made tremendous.
Do we know where he is?
Coming down from Toronto and that to participate on weekends, so they certainly are pioneers of the game also.
That's the question. Do we know where he is, Coach? That's what Chris was.
Oh, I do not. I have not. I have not seen or heard from him since back in that day.
All right, I think that's my homework is the internet stalk Paul Moots. And there were just so many goofy.
You won't find him.
Yeah,
there's
Cole
so
and
many,
you won't find him.
Our job.
No.
Yes.
There were just so many goofy stories.
You know how many?
Go ahead, Chris.
Every time I go watch kids play in Ontario, I ask, "Where's Paul Moots?" You won't find him. I have cold cased this guy for 12 years of my life. We're not going to find him.
All right.
This could be a 30 for 30, Cole. This could be a 30 for 30.
Yes. If anyone in Box Lacrosse finds this video on YouTube, this is us talking about the Turbos, we need to find Paul Moots.
We need him as a guest. Imagine getting him on a guest.
Out west somewhere, Chris. He could be somewhere out west.
He is.
BC, up in the mountains, just enjoying life.
I've asked guys out there too. When I was in Victoria, I went in the rink, the Shamrock rink, and I asked anybody know where Paul Moots is. I ask everybody any chance I get.
Oh, he's like Bigfoot, missing in action.
Yeah. It's probably the one Paul Moots jersey was sold, and that was to me.
ever.
That's super.
Okay, so a bunch of questions. Do you still own the spandex?
Oh man, you know what? They're a little tighter now. I don't wear them very often. Well, I shouldn't say that.
Special occasions, coach.
You know, it's so funny with all memorabilia though. You know, you have stuff and you put it away, and then next thing you know, somebody's asking for something for a charity. So I've pretty much given away almost all of my stuff.
Yeah,
I do have my Maryland jersey sitting just like Eisenman behind you. Only it's in the garage, and it is framed. I think I've got a couple turbo jerseys still. I know I had 4 of them. I think I have 1 left. I think I have one with the captain on it that I kept, and
that's cool.
Basically gave the rest out for charity raffles, et cetera, et cetera.
Hold on to that.
I don't know where those spandex are, to be honest with you.
So I coached Dave. Do you remember Dave Dixon?
Yes.
So I coached Dave's son at St. Hugo when his oldest first got back into first started playing. And the first practice, his son comes out on the field. Because I was emailing Dave, like, hey, you've played. We need coaches. I might have been married. I think I was married, but I don't think my wife and I had started our family and had kids yet. So I'm like, you know what? We need more dads out here that have played. Come on out. Help us out. First practice, his son shows up wearing his Turbos jersey. And this thing is, we're talking a 5th grade boy wearing a box lacrosse jersey. This thing is just draped on him. And I'm like, that is the coolest thing ever. He's like, yeah, you know, Jack didn't know his dad played back in the day, so yeah, throw him wear his jersey. But when Dave was at Warrior, he had his Turbos jersey framed above his desk. So when you walked into Warrior Lacrosse and there was Princeton and Dave Morrow everywhere, you go into Dave Dixon's office and he had the purple Turbos jersey there.
Excellent. Yeah, great guy.
So I want to ask you a story about Dave Dixon's tryout, which Dave did not tell me. I heard from somebody else. So the rumor that I heard was that, or the story was that you guys had an open tryout for guys to come try to play for the Turbos. And Dave Dixon played at Brother Rice, and then he played at Michigan, and he had a pretty storied, decorated career at Rice and at Michigan. He shows up thinking this is going to be like field. So that means gloves, arm pads, helmet, Michigan player, no shoulder pads, no kidney pads. And so the story is that he didn't have the best throwing and catching ability, but he was fast. And every one of you Canadians looked at him and went, this guy's nuts. This guy's coming out here without any gear on. So the first shift Dixon has for the tryout, you know, in field lacrosse, you throw a poke check. You box guys, you give them a little cross check in the ribs. So Dixon's on offense and somebody's cross checking him and he's getting upset because you can't do that in the outdoor game. Come down to the other side, he's on defense now and he throws a poke check at the guy and the guy thinks he's trying to spear him because in box, you give him the cross check. First shift, gloves are down, guys beating the crap out of each other. And the rumor is that your dad just looked over and went, I don't know if the guy can play, but he's crazy and I want him. Do you have any idea if that story is true?
There's a lot of truth in it. I will be honest with you. Most of the guys, the American guys, were not equipped to play that first practice. But like you said about Dave, he was quick. And I still look back on it and I laugh because the box guys were always taught, if somebody spears you, you go after them. You stick up for yourself.
Right.
Spearing is illegal. 5-minute penalty.
Yeah.
And again, it was pretty funny because poor Dave, like I said, you hit it right in the head. He had a couple arm pads on, and guys are slashing and cross-checking everything. What the hell is going on here? We're gonna and a fight broke out, and I can't remember exactly how it all ended, but I remember my dad saying that he liked that kid because of his moxie. And, you know, you can build it up as because he was crazy or whatever, but
crazy moxie, same thing.
Yeah, it was crazy enough, I guess,
Yeah. Crazy moxie.
Yeah, and I know Dave. He's not crazy. He just was naive enough to not know what was going on in a total normally reaction to the situation when you're not sure what's going on. Dave is still in the area in his company. He's the marketing director for a company out in, I believe it's Arizona, and he's commuting back and forth to but the story is, I think the last time I talked to him, that they're building a facility here in Southfield, so he'll be back here. His oldest daughter, I know, graduated from Michigan, I think. What's that, John?
I was going to say, DJ's in the same boat as Jack Conroy, senior this year. And, DJ, talented hockey player. His son at Brother Rice is a senior, talented lacrosse player. And so he was looking at potentially, state finals in hockey, and then, the good chances at state finals in lacrosse this year. So he could miss both of those, which is, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, no doubt. I feel for all of those kids. Like I do. I can't even imagine. Like, I think my favorite year of high school was my senior year, without a doubt.
No question.
Yeah.
And, it's just sad to think that it. Again, let's keep those fingers crossed, though.
Yeah. Well said.
Even if it isn't school.
Yeah.
Right. Somehow, some way, let's get him on the field for something.
Yeah.
So you played for your dad for the Turbos. You won a championship. You played with the Gait Brothers. You only had a 4-year MIL career, but you saw a lot in those 4 years. Personally, second team all league, won the championship. What's kind of your favorite memory in there? Are there any stories you want to kind of a favorite story to share?
Well, I think one of the funniest ones ever was, and I had forgot about it until it came on Retro Lacrosse the other day, and that was, we went into Philadelphia, and for some reason, the league decided they could not find the lacrosse goals, so we decided to play with hockey goals, and the guy for Philly, Brad Kotz, played with this skinny, looked like a woman's stick. The pocket was so shallow, but that guy could shoot like no tomorrow. And then you give him a 2-foot wider goal, and he lit it up pretty good. I think that was one of the funniest things, because I remember I always was taught to shoot for the pipe. And I think I scored 3 goals that game, but I hit like 6 goalposts. What are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, what's the matter with you?
Mission accomplished, Coach. Mission accomplished.
Yeah. So one of the things that I always talk to the kids about now is when they hit the post and it doesn't go in, I say, what did I tell you? Inside pipe, okay? Come on now, let's get this straight. Yeah, that was a funny time. Philadelphia was always a treat to go to, because those fans were crazy, and they loved the indoor game so much. I'm happy that they got it back now.
Yeah. They you guys had some battles with them, really physical games with them, and in the later season when the Gates were playing for Philly, they were just battles. A lot of physical play, a lot of big hits, a lot of contact on the crease.
Yeah, they had some big boys.
Yeah. So do you think there's ever a chance for an NLL team to get back to Michigan, to get back to Little Caesars Arena? Have you heard any chatter on anything? Does anyone ever reach out to you and say, could pro lacrosse work here again?
Well, I had heard some rumor, and actually just before the expansion of 2 years ago, where they expanded and added two teams, Philly, or I guess it was last year then anyway, but there was a lot of talk about possibly coming back to Detroit, and that there was some rumor that the Illich family was quite interested in it. certainly because with the new arena, they were looking to dates. And, again, I haven't heard much about it since then. And when they announced the expansion of the other teams, it kind of gone by the wayside. But there's still people out there that are continuing to talk about it. My good friend Dominic Papa, who calls the play-by-play, or did, for the Saginaw OHL team, he said that also that the owner of the Saginaw team was interested. I think that they're really thinking about bigger hubs though than Saginaw.
Yeah.
That'd be great to see though, wouldn't it?
Oh man.
We
got the broadcast. They got the broadcaster already too.
Yeah, Losie's ready to go on the call. But yeah, we grew up in an era, and we're going to have the old Michigan State coach Rich Kimball on the podcast next week. I grew up in an era where I dreamed of playing for the green and white and the purple and black, and they're gone. And whether it's the PLL or the MLL, we just can't seem to get a foothold to get anything to come back to show the kids what the game can look like at that high level. And we've had enough fun stuff where the Detroit Titans have played at Ultimate Soccer Arenas and put several thousand people in there to host Michigan or to host Marquette or Ohio State and some of that stuff. But we're not getting the big venue draws that I think would be really fun for the community. And as the U.S. Lacrosse guy, I really want to grow the game here. More members for U.S. Lacrosse, more kids with sticks, and I think a marquee showcase kind of event like that, or team that we could get behind, would really help. But I don't have the checkbook to write.
Yeah. You know what? It's Rich Kimball, great guy. He reached out to me last year, and I had him on the schedule. We were going to play this year. And I was really kind of like, I hadn't heard from him in so long. And all of a sudden he heard I was coaching, and he reached out to me, and I put him on the schedule, Lansing Catholic, and we were ready to go at it,
Wow.
So again, I hope that was scheduled. I think that was scheduled for the latter part of the season. I don't know if in fact we get anything going, whether that's going to go on or not, but great to see him involved in the game still. Would love to see Michigan State get an NCAA team back together. I know, Coach, you'd love to see that too. Have a couple more people in the area, although it might be more difficult for recruiting, but you know what I mean. Just to have more teams at the higher level. If it's going to be field lacrosse, NCAA, then so be it. Just as long as it's lacrosse.
Something. Yeah, my idea was always, in terms of getting a team back here, was if you could split it between half the games in Windsor and half the games here, right? And so you really kind of pull with both sides of the river. You incorporate that into the marketing theme of it. I thought that would be really cool.
Yeah, we got a nice facility here now. They built the new arena here, and a nice facility. That would be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would work. I mean, that would play, because now you got two sets. I mean, then you got people crossing the border, whatever it may be, and it's just one big hub and then you're also getting the international piece, obviously, with Canada as well. So nobody listens to me, Coach. I just put ideas out there, and we just go from there.
Well, it could come true. Who knows? Like I said, the game continues to grow, and it's growing at some rapid rates. You even think about the fact that Denver won that championship a few years back.
Oh yeah.
To get it further west, it's fantastic. Like the growth that I've seen out of it has just been terrific. And if you go back and you look at some of the old games and then watch what's going on new, you can see that the game has really evolved also. And
the athletes,
it's great to be a part of it still.
Yeah. That's fun.
That's exciting. We've got a couple weeks worth of guests lined up. We're going to keep going through this, but we might have to do a round 2 of this just to tell more Turbo stories. Or even if we do find, what was his name? Paul Moots.
In search of.
Exactly.
I still have
I'm telling you, this is our tagline to end the show. At the end of every show, the question is going to be, where is Paul Moots?
Yes.
So, well, you know what? Next time on, I'll don the. If you invite me back, I'll don the turbo jersey.
Oh, good. I thought you were going to see the spandex.
Listen, Coach. I could replace Eisenman. If you wanted to go right up there in the back, I'm open for discussion, Coach.
There you go.
No, but we might be able to do this if we can get questions. Oh, go ahead, Colin.
I've got 15 questions on Detroit Windsor Lacrosse Club because I think the statute of limitations is over for Detroit Windsor Lacrosse Club. But we'll save that for next time.
All right, Chris. Sounds good.
So I got questions about your golf game. Coach. I've got some messages here saying you're a really good putter.
Yeah, you know what? No sense in getting old if you can't putt.
Exactly.
You know what? Again, this whole thing has been completely different in everybody's life. I've never experienced anything like this. Just the idea that even the golf courses over here are not even open. I don't know if they are over on your side, but
no. Yep, we're close too.
The idea of being cooped up and not even be able to hit a golf ball around is kind of frustrating. And if they decide to take the lacrosse season into July, that means that'll be less golf time for me. So you got to be able to putt.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No question. And you can practice indoors too, Coach.
I know that.
Well, Coach, what we can do with this technology is once we all get, our next phase, I can actually share my screen and we could get some of your old players and do a watch party in one of these games. So if we can find your brother, we can find some of those guys. This is the 91 championship game. It's on YouTube. We could have some fun with a watch party, let you guys tell some stories and have some fun with it. Because if we don't have lacrosse right now, it's not that we don't have lacrosse. We just don't have our games. We don't have our schedules. So but we'll find something to have some fun with it.
Yep.
Sounds good.
So
great.
I will wrap it up like I always do. Everybody go join US Lacrosse, uslacrosse.org. Follow us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter, USL_lacrosse. And then our YouTube channel. This will be on there. We're on Apple, iTunes, podcasts. We're everywhere. On behalf of Coach Colin and John Losey, Lax Losey, Coach, it was a real fanboy moment for me to have you on. I really appreciate you spending some time with us.
Well, thank you very much. Great to see you, fellas. Coach Colin, looking forward to seeing you soon, too.
All right, Coach. Have a good night.
Soon.
Hey, Coach.